In the hush of a sleepless night, a soft voice rises, neither urgent nor hurried, but timeless. The world outside has gone quiet. Streetlights hum faintly, stars blink through the curtain of dark, and somewhere, an unseen current seems to pull thought towards stillness. It's in that space between waking and dream that we begin. The story doesn't start in a single place, nor a single time, but everywhere that humans once gathered in darkness and looked toward the unknown. The fires have long since burned out, but the smoke of those first stories still drifts through our collective memory. Every civilization, no matter how small, began with a question. What is the sky? Who moves the stars? Why must we die? Those who could not answer turned to silence, and those who could not bear silence began to tell stories. Around the warmth of firelight, under skies that felt infinite, voices rose. They shaped gods out of thunder, spirits out of wind, meaning out of fear. And thus, before cities, before writing, before kings or calendars, myth was born. The earliest storytellers were not writers, for writing did not yet exist. They were watchers, men and women who studied the rhythms of the world, the rising of the sun, the return of seasons, the pattern of the hunt, the pulse of the river. To them, these things were not mere cycles, but conversations. The earth spoke, the sky replied, and humankind listened in awe. In those quiet moments, something miraculous happened. Imagination became a bridge between the visible and the invisible. What could not be touched was still felt. What could not be proven was still believed. As the first settlements grew along fertile valleys, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus, the Yellow River, myth evolved into memory. It was no longer only a story told for comfort, but a structure upon which entire societies were built. Gods were given names, realms, families, duties. The chaos of nature was translated into order. Floods, storms, and harvests all found purpose within divine will. For the first time, the human world was mirrored by a celestial one. The fields and temples below reflected the heavens above, and the people felt less alone beneath the great dark canopy of night. Imagine, for a moment, that ancient world. The air smells of earth and smoke. The horizon is wide and unbroken. There are no machines, no metal towers, no constant hum of electricity, only the steady rhythm of nature and the heartbeat of the tribe. In that simplicity, the mysterious was not separate from life. It was woven into it. When lightning struck, it was a message. When dreams came, they were warnings. When a child was born, the stars themselves seemed to rearrange. Existence felt alive, sacred, and endlessly responsive. To fall asleep under such skies must have been to drift directly into myth. Every dream a continuation of story, every shadow a potential spirit. It was a world alive with meaning, but also with fear. Because for every benevolent god, there was another, darker, crueler, unknowable. Death lingered at the edge of every field, every journey, every childbirth. And so stories became shields. Myths were not just tales to entertain. They were soft armor against despair. They explained why storms came and why people vanished, why crops failed, why hearts ached. To speak a story was to name the chaos, and in naming, to lessen it. The oldest myths we know are fragments, carved on clay tablets, painted on cave walls, whispered through generations until the words themselves faded, but the meanings endured. Yet, even those broken pieces tell us something profound, that from the very beginning, humans were dreamers. We have always longed to understand where we came from, why we exist, and what lies beyond the last breath. Myths are the first record of that longing, a map drawn not in ink, but in wonder. But beneath their beauty lies something even more haunting, a memory. Many myths, when examined closely, are not merely fantasies, but echoes of real events. Floods that once drowned entire valleys. Volcanoes that darkened the sky for months. Comets that split the heavens and terrified villages below. Ancient storytellers saw these things not through the eyes of science, but through the language of symbol. A mountain erupting became a god's rage. A star fallen became a messenger. A flood became divine cleansing. And slowly, humanity learned to live with the unpredictable through the comfort of story. As centuries passed, myths grew, intertwined, and transformed. Each culture gave its own voice to the same questions. The Egyptians spoke of Ra's golden voyage across the sky, the Sumerians of Anu's heavenly realm, the Greeks of Zeus and the thunder's throne. Different names, different tongues, but the same yearning, an attempt to find order in a world that so often seemed chaotic. When humans first lifted their eyes to the stars, they didn't just see light, they saw stories. Heroes, monsters, and fates painted across the darkness, telling them who they were and what they might become. Tonight, as we revisit those stories, we do not seek to prove or disprove them. The goal is gentler. We are here to listen, to understand why they were told, what they meant, and how their truths still ripple quietly through time. Myths were never meant to be solved. They were meant to be felt. Each one a meditation, a mirror, a lullaby. The fire that once burned beside our ancestors now glows in our screens, but the impulse remains the same, to find warmth in mystery, to drift between fact and faith, and to dream of gods who once walked among us. So as the hum of the modern world fades into the background, imagine yourself beside that ancient fire once more. The night is deep, the stars patient. The storyteller leans forward, his shadow flickering against the stone, and begins, not with certainty, but with reverence. He speaks softly, so softly you almost have to lean in to hear. Once, he says, before memory, before history, there were stories. The fire cracks, the air trembles, and just like that, the world begins again. In the next moment, the voice continues, gentle, calm, rhythmic. It promises that behind every myth lies a heartbeat of truth waiting to be rediscovered. That what we call legend might, in some forgotten way, be history wearing a dream's disguise. The night listens. The stars seem to lean closer. And as you drift between curiosity and calm, one realization settles softly in the mind. Humanity has never truly been alone. Even in our earliest darkness, we had our stories. We had our myths. And perhaps that has always been enough. The first rays of dawn do not merely illuminate the earth. They reveal the beginnings of thought itself. In the earliest cradles of civilization, humans were not yet gods, nor kings, nor scribes. They were watchers and listeners, suspended in a world that felt impossibly vast. Mesopotamia, with its flat, endless plains and rivers that carved life from mud, was one of the first theaters of this awakening. Here, people stared at the sky, noting the precise movements of stars and planets, the rise and fall of the Tigris and Euphrates, the slow, deliberate shift of seasons. Each observation was a question waiting to be answered, each silence a space for imagination to stretch. And so, in these spaces, the first myths were born, not as entertainment, but as a vital means of survival. The gods of early Mesopotamia were not distant abstractions. They were intimate forces woven into the fabric of daily life. Anu, the sky god, watched from above. Enlil controlled the winds that could bring either fertile rains or devastating storms. Inanna moved between love and war with a grace and cruelty humans could scarcely fathom. To the people of Uruk or Uar, these beings were not stories. They were companions, adversaries, and moral arbiters. Each clay tablet, each ritual offering, was a conversation with the forces that shaped their lives. Every prayer whispered into the dust-laden air carried a mixture of hope and fear, an acknowledgement that survival depended not solely on human effort, but on understanding the will of the divine. Further east, along the banks of the Nile, a different rhythm emerged. Ancient Egyptians, guided by the predictable flooding of their river, saw in this cycle a reflection of eternity. Life and death were mirrored in the daily journey of Ra across the sky, the nightly passage through Duat, the hidden underworld. Pharaohs were not only rulers, they were living conduits, bridges between earth and cosmos, ensuring that balance, or ma'at, endured. The myths of Egypt are meticulous, elegant, and ordered, yet beneath their structured hieroglyphs lies the same quiet human yearning to comprehend the invisible, to give shape to the forces that govern existence. The gods, in their multifaceted forms, were less characters than reflections of human observation, embodied principles of nature, morality, and cosmic justice. As civilizations multiplied and rivers cradled cities, humans began to document their observations. Writing, first invented to keep track of grain and trade, soon became the vessel for storytelling. The Epic of Gilgamesh, among the earliest known literary works, recounts the deeds of a king who confronts mortality, divine caprice, and the quest for eternal life. In its verses, one can hear the echo of countless generations who faced the fragility of existence and sought meaning in the stars, the soil, and the human heart. It is a testament not just to individual ambition, but to the collective consciousness of a people navigating a world both beautiful and terrifying. Yet the creators of these myths did not only record the world as it was, they imagined it as it might be. The boundaries between reality and possibility were fluid, allowing humans to explore moral lessons, natural phenomena, and cosmic questions simultaneously. Stories became living frameworks, teaching respect for the rivers and winds, reverence for life's mysteries, and humility before forces beyond control. Each myth, though particular to its culture, contains a universal core, an attempt to wrest order from chaos, to bridge the human and the divine. Listeners in the quiet of night can almost hear the same impulse in their own subconscious, a need to weave narrative over the raw material of experience, to find coherence in a vast, often unknowable universe. Across continents, the same patterns emerged. In the Indus Valley, cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro hinted at organized belief systems, though much remains hidden beneath millennia of sediment and silence. In China, early stories spoke of dragons and celestial beings shaping the land, while later dynasties codified myths that aligned natural phenomena with moral principles. What is striking is the universality of the human response. In every place, humans confronted the unknown with imagination, and in that confrontation, mythology was born. It was a language without borders, a shared meditation on existence, a quiet bridge between observation and meaning. But what of the darker side of these early myths? For every creation story or tale of divine benevolence, there were warnings, omens of wrath, destruction, and punishment. Humanity was acutely aware of its vulnerability. Storms could ruin crops, rivers could flood, and disease could strike without mercy. Myths encoded these fears, transforming them into narratives that could be communicated, remembered, and heeded. The gods were both nurturers and punishers, embodiments of the unpredictability of the world. By attributing agency to forces beyond their control, humans were able to navigate life with a sense of narrative structure, finding solace in the predictability of story even when the world itself remained uncertain. In this way, early myths were neither wholly fact nor entirely fiction. They existed in the liminal space between experience and imagination, a delicate balance between observation and interpretation. They provided a way to understand the cosmos while preserving the awe and mystery that made life meaningful. Every act of worship, every offering, every whispered story was a meditation, a quiet dialogue with the invisible, an acknowledgement that even as humans shaped the world shaped them in return. The rhythm of life, death, and divine observation flowed into human consciousness, giving rise to the first moral frameworks, the earliest rituals, and the foundations of culture itself. Myths allowed communities to teach values, to preserve knowledge, and to create a sense of continuity across generations. As dawn spilled its golden light over fertile plains and rising cities, people looked skyward and knew that they were part of something larger, a continuum that connected the earth, the heavens, and the uncharted landscapes of the human spirit. Tonight, as we drift in quiet reflection, We are invited to listen to these first whispers of civilization, to understand that myths were never frivolous tales, but essential companions, helping humans navigate fear, uncertainty, and wonder. They are stories written in the language of the cosmos, speaking to the same part of ourselves that still looks upward at stars, questions the unknown, and seeks solace in narrative. The gods of Mesopotamia and Egypt, though distant in time, continue to whisper, reminding us that imagination is the oldest, most enduring bridge between humanity and the mysteries that surround us. Even as centuries pass, these ancient voices endure. They invite us to slow down, to observe, to dream, and to wonder. They remind us that before cities, before kings, before written history, humans turned their gaze to the sky and began a conversation that continues today. The divine and the mortal intertwined in stories that both comforted and cautioned, entertained and educated, inspired and warned. And in that timeless space, we find ourselves still, listening, imagining, and drifting toward understanding, even as the world sleeps around us. The story of the flood begins in whispers, passed down through countless generations, each time reshaped by memory and imagination. From the clay tablets of Sumer to the epic narratives of the Hebrews and Greeks, the tale repeats. Waters rise, the earth groans beneath their weight, and humanity is tested. It is a story of survival and rebirth, of destruction and mercy, and yet its persistence across cultures suggests something more than mere fiction. Could there have been a historical kernel, a shared memory of catastrophe, that gave rise to these legends? As we drift into this narrative, the line between fact and myth becomes fluid, and we are invited to explore the flood not only as a story, but as a reflection of human experience in the face of forces larger than ourselves. In Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates was both fertile and treacherous. The rivers could nourish crops and cities, but they could also swell without warning, washing away homes, fields, and livelihoods. It is here that the earliest flood stories emerged, etched into clay by scribes who sought to preserve memory and meaning. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, a man chosen by the gods to survive a great deluge. The narrative is rich with symbolism, the ark as sanctuary, the storm as divine judgment, and the ultimate promise of life's renewal. Listeners today can almost hear the river's roar, feel the fear of a civilization threatened by its own lifeblood, and understand why such events would become the focus of myth. Across cultures and continents, similar stories emerged independently. In the Hebrew tradition, Noah's Ark recounts a flood that cleanses the world, sparing only those deemed righteous. The waters rise inexorably, carrying both terror and hope. The parallels between Utnapishtim and Noah are striking. Perhaps not mere coincidence, but a testament to humanity's need to narrate trauma, to encode lessons in story form. The flood becomes a mirror, reflecting both the fragility and resilience of human societies. Through myth, natural disaster is transformed into narrative and narrative into understanding. Archaeology provides tantalizing glimpses of the reality that may have inspired these myths. Layers of sediment in the Mesopotamian floodplain suggest periodic inundations, sometimes catastrophic in scale. Sudden rises in river levels, perhaps caused by ice melt from distant mountains or shifting river courses, could have wiped out villages and reshaped the landscape. Imagine standing on a riverbank thousands of years ago, watching the waters swallow familiar landmarks, hearing the cries of your neighbors carried away by the current. The memory of such an event would be seared into communal consciousness, and stories would naturally arise to preserve both warning and wisdom. The flood myth also carries moral weight. Across traditions, it is a story of judgment, of divine evaluation, of humanity's need to balance hubris with humility. The destruction is not arbitrary. It is a response to transgression, imbalance, or human failing. Yet even amid devastation, there is mercy, a thread of hope that life will endure. The Ark, the chosen survivors, the eventual restoration of the land. These motifs remind us that even in chaos, order and renewal are possible. In this way, the myth transcends simple history and becomes a meditation on the human condition, our vulnerability, our capacity for adaptation, and our enduring desire for redemption. The narrative of the flood is also an exploration of memory and imagination intertwined. Oral traditions preserved events long before written language existed. The repetition of the flood across generations ensured that even if the specifics became embellished or altered, the essence, the sudden rise of waters, the survival of a select few, the promise of renewal, remained. These stories provided a template for understanding the unpredictable world, a framework for fear, hope, and moral contemplation. They offered listeners a way to process natural disaster, transforming terror into reflection and guidance. In addition, the flood myth resonates with a universal psychological rhythm. The rising and receding waters mirror cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Just as the rivers inundated fields and receded to nourish the soil, so too does human life undergo periods of challenge and recovery. The flood, then, becomes both literal and metaphorical, a reflection of environmental catastrophe and of the inner currents of human experience. Its repetition across cultures suggests an innate understanding of these rhythms, encoded in story for both comfort and instruction. Across the ancient world, different details were added, reflecting local environments and cultural priorities. In Mesopotamia, cedar trees and distant mountains appear. In the Hebrew account, the ark is a vast, ordered vessel. In Greek myths, Deucalion and Pyrrha survive to repopulate the earth. Each adaptation speaks to the human desire to situate divine intervention within familiar landscapes, to make the extraordinary tangible. Even as myths diverged, the central themes endured: destruction, survival, morality, and renewal. These constants suggest that floods were more than metaphor. They were lived experience, elevated to timeless narrative. Yet there is a haunting beauty in the uncertainty of these stories. We cannot know whether every detail reflects reality or imagination, and perhaps that is precisely the point. The flood exists in the liminal space between memory and myth, history and dream. It invites contemplation rather than solution, reflection rather than certainty. In its cadence, in the rising and falling of waters and voices, it echoes the same rhythm as sleep, meditation, and quiet thought. It is a story meant to be felt as much as understood. As we move forward through time and across lands, the flood continues to ripple. Later civilizations carried its essence, reshaping it to address new questions and challenges. Even today, in literature, art, and film, the flood endures as a symbol of overwhelming change, moral reckoning, and the promise of renewal. Its persistence reminds us that human experience, when distilled into story, can transcend generations, geography, and even the boundaries of reason itself. In the quiet of night, we can imagine the ancient storyteller, voice low and steady, recounting the rising waters to a circle of listeners. The faces of children, elders, and wanderers are illuminated by firelight, each absorbing the tale with reverence and fear. And as the story unfolds, it does more than entertain. It teaches, warns, comforts, and preserves. It is the first example of myth as lifeline, a vessel carrying memory across time. For those listening now, the tale of the flood is not merely a story from long ago. It is a bridge connecting us to the pulse of humanity's earliest reflections on mortality, morality, and the overwhelming forces of the natural world. Thus, the flood myth is both history and dream, danger and comfort, fact and imagination. It carries the weight of human vulnerability, the awe of divine power, and the gentle reassurance that life, like the receding waters, endures. As the story subsides into silence, the listener drifts with it, carried by the gentle current of memory and myth alike, preparing to encounter the next whisper of ancient wisdom in the unfolding tapestry of human storytelling. Long before written history recorded our thoughts, certain symbols traveled across continents and centuries, taking on new forms but preserving an ancient resonance. Among the most enduring of these is the serpent, winding through myth as both a danger and a guide, a destroyer and a teacher. Coupled often with the image of the tree, the serpent becomes a bridge between the earthly and the divine, the known and the mysterious. From the Fertile Crescent to the jungles of Mesoamerica, these symbols recur with an uncanny similarity, hinting at a shared human fascination with wisdom, transformation, and the precarious gift of knowledge. They speak to something instinctive within us, a recognition that some truths are best revealed in shadow and metaphor rather than plain speech. In Mesopotamian culture, the serpent was not simply a creature of terror. Ninjashida, the god of the underworld, was often depicted entwined with serpentine motifs, representing regeneration, the cycles of life and death, and the flow of knowledge from hidden realms. His coils were not meant to trap, but to teach, a reminder that understanding often comes through patient observation and careful reflection. The tree in these myths, frequently the tree of life, stands as a counterpart to the serpent's movement, rooted, eternal, and reaching toward the heavens. Together, serpent and tree embody duality, motion and stillness, chaos and order, temptation and enlightenment. Traveling westward, the imagery reappears in the Garden of Eden, where the serpent coils around the tree of knowledge. Here, the narrative takes on moral weight, illustrating the tension between obedience and curiosity, innocence and awareness. The serpent tempts, the tree promises understanding, and humanity steps into the dawn of self-consciousness. Though interpreted variously over millennia, the story preserves the same essence seen in earlier cultures, that wisdom is entwined with risk, that knowledge is a gift that must be approached with reverence, and that transformation often comes through challenge. The story's quiet power lies not in its conclusion, but in the tension it creates, the dance between desire and caution, between the comfort of ignorance and the awakening of awareness. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl carries both physical and spiritual significance. He is a creator, a teacher, a bringer of civilization. His flight between earth and sky echoes the serpent's eternal motion. The tree of life echoed in the maize and ceiba trees revered by the Maya. Here, the serpent is not merely a cautionary figure, but a symbol of creativity and renewal. To the ancient peoples of this region, knowledge was a living force, rising, falling, and circulating like wind and water, and the feathered serpent embodied this perpetual motion. The myth reinforces a lesson familiar across cultures. Wisdom is dynamic, ever-changing, and often entwined with the divine. The recurrence of serpents and trees in distant cultures suggests that humans instinctively turn to certain archetypes to make sense of the world. These symbols are rarely static. They move, shift, and adapt to the landscapes and values of each society. They represent the tension between the familiar and the unknown, the tangible and the mysterious, offering a safe container in which societies could explore fear, desire, and ambition. The serpent's sly motion and the tree's patient rootedness create a visual language that speaks to the human subconscious, transcending borders and epochs. The psychological resonance of these symbols is profound. Serpents evoke both fear and fascination. They are at once predators and protectors, embodying the duality of life itself. Trees, in their quiet stability, evoke continuity, growth, and the passage of time. Together, they encapsulate human understanding of the natural and spiritual worlds. That knowledge often comes at a cost, that enlightenment is both alluring and perilous, and that the pursuit of understanding requires courage, patience, and humility. As night falls over ancient landscapes, one can almost imagine early humans staring at the winding coils of snakes in the underbrush or the twisted branches of trees against the sky, sensing the same truths later codified into myth. The stories of serpents and trees often carry moral and existential lessons. In some myths, the serpent is a guide through trials, leading heroes to insight and transformation. In others, it is a test of restraint, a reminder of human vulnerability to temptation and desire. The tree, conversely, stands as witness and teacher, a silent observer of human choices, offering fruit, shade, and life itself. The interplay between these two symbols provides a subtle narrative rhythm: tension and release, danger and reward, ignorance and awakening. It is a rhythm that echoes through dreams, meditative reflection, and the gentle unfolding of stories told by firelight. Even in cultures separated by oceans and centuries, these motifs carry similar emotional and spiritual weight. The Norse spoke of Yggdrasil, the world tree, supporting realms both known and hidden, while serpentine creatures like Jormungandr encircled the earth, bridging life and death. In Africa and the Pacific Islands, serpents often guard sacred spaces, while trees serve as portals to the ancestral world. Across every continent, these images emerge not as arbitrary coincidence, but as expressions of universal human concerns: mortality, morality, curiosity, and the desire to connect with forces larger than ourselves. As we reflect on these recurring symbols tonight, it becomes clear that myths are not mere stories. They are meditations, vessels for timeless truths that the human mind seeks to grasp but cannot fully contain. The serpent's winding motion invites the mind to follow, to consider the twists and turns of wisdom, while the tree's roots and branches anchor the imagination, offering stability amidst uncertainty. Together, they embody the very nature of myth itself, something living, breathing, and endlessly interpretable, capable of guiding humanity through fear, wonder, and the quiet contemplation of our place in the cosmos. In drifting between cultures, continents, and millennia, the serpent and the tree teach a subtle, nocturnal lesson. Knowledge is entwined with mystery, and understanding often comes through experience as much as observation. They remind us that myths are not simply tales to be told, but living frameworks, gentle companions that have accompanied humanity from the first moments of consciousness into the present. As listeners, we are invited to move slowly through these stories, to feel their motion as much as their meaning, and to recognize that even the oldest symbols carry a pulse, a quiet whisper that connects us to every generation that has ever looked upon a winding serpent or a reaching tree and wondered at the secrets of existence. Beneath the waves, buried beneath shifting sands, and hidden within mountains long eroded by time, lie the remnants of civilizations that humanity once imagined, revered, and ultimately lost. These lost worlds have sparked the imagination of countless generations, giving rise to stories that linger between memory and myth. Among the most famous of these is Atlantis, described by Plato as a realm of remarkable beauty, advanced knowledge, and sudden destruction. Yet similar tales of sunken kingdoms and vanished cities appear across continents, suggesting that the notion of lost civilizations is not limited to imagination alone. It may also be a reflection of collective memory, encoded into myth as a warning, a lament, or a dream. Plato's account of Atlantis, written thousands of years ago, tells of a civilization that thrived beyond the Pillars of Hercules, rich with knowledge, architecture, and organization far surpassing contemporary Athens. But as the story unfolds, hubris and moral decay invite divine retribution. The land sinks beneath the sea, leaving only whispers and fragments behind. For centuries, scholars have debated whether Atlantis was allegorical or historical, yet the power of the myth endures. It speaks to an eternal human fascination with both the heights of achievement and the inevitability of loss, the delicate balance between creation and destruction. Across the globe, other lost civilizations echo this same tension. In Hindu texts, the city of Dvarka, associated with Krishna, is said to have been submerged in the Arabian Sea, leaving behind ruins that modern archaeologists have partially uncovered. In Mesoamerica, the Mayas speak of cities abandoned long before the Spanish arrived, their decline shrouded in mystery, attributed to droughts, resource depletion, and social upheaval. The repetition of these themes suggests that memory, disaster, and storytelling are intimately linked. Humanity experiences catastrophe, encodes it into narrative, and passes it down as myth. Lost civilizations, therefore, are as much about memory as they are about history. Geology and archaeology offer glimpses of why these myths may have persisted. Rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age reshaped coastlines, swallowed islands, and forced migrations of entire communities. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis erased cities, leaving only oral traditions to keep their memory alive. Imagine ancient peoples standing on a beach, watching their homes and temples vanish beneath the waves, powerless against forces they could neither control nor fully comprehend. Their grief and astonishment would have been profound, and the only way to ensure such events were not forgotten was to tell stories. Stories that transformed catastrophe into narrative and narrative into enduring myth. The universality of the lost civilization motif also suggests a psychological dimension. Humans are naturally drawn to notions of disappearance and disappearance's moral or cosmic implications. A city swallowed by the ocean is a reminder of impermanence, a meditation on hubris, and an invitation to reflect on the fragility of life and achievement. Myths of submerged worlds thus serve dual purposes. They preserve memory and instill caution, reminding us that even the greatest of civilizations can vanish when balance is broken or when nature asserts its inescapable dominance. Yet within these myths lies more than warning. They are also expressions of hope and continuity. Even as cities fall, the stories of their inhabitants, their knowledge, and their culture endure. The ruins, whether real or imagined, serve as a mirror, reflecting humanity's capacity to dream, to rebuild, and to adapt. Atlantis, Dvarka, and the abandoned Maya cities all speak to a desire to reclaim something lost, to remember achievements and wisdom that time has threatened to erase. In listening to these stories, we participate in a kind of resurrection, bringing vanished worlds back into awareness, even if only in imagination. The aesthetic of lost civilizations has always captivated the human mind. The idea of a sunken city beneath tranquil waves, its marble temples and golden towers swallowed by water, evokes both serenity and melancholy. It is a duality that mirrors the human experience. Beauty can be fleeting, and loss can contain profound insight. As the mythological oceans of Atlantis or Dvarka recede in our imagination, we are left with questions. What did these civilizations truly achieve? What knowledge did they hold? And what lessons might we glean from their stories? In contemplating these vanished worlds, we enter a reflective space where wonder and humility coexist, where curiosity meets quiet meditation. Lost civilizations also highlight the interweaving of cultural memory across generations. Stories were transmitted orally for centuries, adapting to new languages, environments, and audiences while retaining the essence of human awe and fear. The myth of Atlantis inspired Renaissance thinkers, colonial explorers, and modern storytellers alike, each era interpreting it according to contemporary concerns and knowledge. Similarly, echoes of submerged Hindu cities informed local legends and historical inquiry, while the mysterious Maya sites continue to inspire archaeologists and dreamers alike. These stories are living, not static. They evolve yet maintain a thread connecting us to the humans who first witnessed disappearance, devastation, and renewal. The symbolism of lost civilizations extends beyond geography into metaphor. They reflect humanity's contemplation of impermanence, power, and mortality. To imagine a city disappearing beneath the waves is to confront the inevitability of change, the impermanence of all human endeavor. Yet the stories themselves, preserved in myth, literature, and archaeological study provide continuity. They reassure us that while physical structures may vanish, memory, wisdom, and imagination endure. These myths are thus both warnings and lullabies, gentle reminders that even when worlds are lost, the human mind preserves them in story. In reflecting on these myths tonight, we are invited to consider our own place within the cycle of creation and destruction. What we build, how we inhabit our world, and what we choose to remember all echo the lessons of lost civilizations. Each story is a meditation on impermanence, a quiet lesson in humility, and a gentle exploration of continuity. As we imagine these sunken cities, we move between fascination and introspection, carried along by the ebb and flow of narrative just as surely as waves carry debris to shore. Ultimately, the allure of lost civilizations lies in their balance between wonder and melancholy, fact and imagination, memory and mystery. They remind us that human achievement is fragile yet resilient, fleeting yet eternal through story. By revisiting these vanished worlds in thought and imagination, we are participating in an age-old ritual, preserving wisdom, honoring memory, and dreaming of what might have been. In that quiet reflection, the listener drifts deeper into the world of myth, prepared to meet the next tale of divine intervention and cosmic wonder. High above the world, in the vast expanse of sky and star, civilizations have long imagined beings who descend from the heavens, bringing with them knowledge, fire, and the mysteries of the cosmos. From the Apkallu of Mesopotamia to the Watchers in Hebrew tradition, and even to the sky people of Polynesian lore, myths of divine visitors recur with a remarkable consistency. These figures are neither wholly human nor entirely God, but inhabit a liminal space that bridges earth and heaven. They teach, they guide, they warn, and their arrival is always marked by awe, wonder, and often fear. In exploring these myths, we begin to see how humanity has historically interpreted phenomena beyond understanding, transforming natural events into narrative and the unknown into divine presence. In Mesopotamian texts, the Apkallu are described as 7 sages sent from the gods to impart wisdom to early humanity. They are sometimes depicted as part human, part fish or bird, moving between worlds with ease. Their role is both protective and instructive. They bring knowledge of agriculture, writing, and sacred rituals, ensuring that civilization can flourish under divine guidance. The Apkallu are revered not merely as emissaries, but as embodiments of a bridge between human ingenuity and celestial oversight. Their descent is portrayed as deliberate, purposeful, and transformative, reminding the people that knowledge and advancement are gifts from forces beyond their comprehension. The Watchers, as described in the Book of Enoch, offer a more cautionary vision. Angels descend to earth, captivated by human beauty, and in their mingling with mortals, they disrupt the natural order. Their presence brings both enlightenment and corruption, introducing forbidden knowledge and creating chaos. The narrative presents a complex moral landscape. Divine visitors are not automatically benevolent, and the gift of knowledge carries responsibility and consequence. This tension between awe and danger, wonder and warning, is central to the human response to extraordinary events, particularly those phenomena that ancient observers could not explain, such as meteors streaking across the sky or the brilliance of comets. Across cultures, similar myths emerge with remarkable resonance. In Polynesia, the sky people are said to have come from distant stars, bringing tools, techniques, and teachings that shaped early society. These beings were honored and remembered in oral traditions, their legacy woven into rituals, navigation, and social order. The stories reflect the same human fascination with beings that move beyond ordinary constraints, creatures who possess knowledge of the heavens, who walk among mortals, and who can shape the trajectory of civilization itself. Whether benevolent, ambiguous, or cautionary, the divine visitor embodies the human desire to understand forces greater than ourselves. Modern science offers potential explanations for these myths. Meteors, comets, and other celestial events would have appeared as fire from the sky to ancient observers, unpredictable and terrifying in their brilliance. The destructive power of a meteor impact or the awe-inspiring spectacle of a comet may have inspired stories of divine arrival, gifts from the heavens, or even catastrophic intervention. In a world without telescopes or meteorology, these extraordinary occurrences demanded narrative interpretation, and the mind translated what could not be explained into beings that possessed intention and will. Myth, then, is a human mechanism for contextualizing the extraordinary, an imaginative bridge that transforms chaos into story and fear into reflection. The symbolism of descent is also deeply human. Beings who fall from the sky suggest the collapse of distance between mortal and divine, a merging of realms that are ordinarily separate. Fire often accompanies their arrival, whether in the literal sense of a celestial event or the metaphorical sense of illumination, creativity, or destruction. This duality, fire as both tool and weapon, as both enlightenment and danger, mirrors human experience. Knowledge is never neutral. It carries risk, responsibility, and the potential to transform or disrupt. The myths remind listeners that progress, like fire, can warm or consume, and that the human relationship with the unknown is always delicate. Stories of these celestial visitors were also a way of encoding and preserving knowledge. When the Apkallu taught agriculture or ritual practice, and when the Watchers introduced forbidden arts, the narratives served both as moral guides and practical memory tools. They allowed generations to comprehend their environment, integrate lessons into daily life, and navigate social and natural challenges. In a time before formal education, myth functioned as both cautionary tale and manual, ensuring survival and fostering curiosity tempered with respect for forces beyond human control. The arrival of fire from the sky is a recurring motif precisely because it embodies both the awe and terror of the unknown. Lightning, comets, and meteors would have inspired reverence, prompting humans to imagine intention behind natural phenomena. In many cultures, the descent of divine beings parallels these events, suggesting a psychological and observational basis for myth-making. Humans instinctively interpret powerful, inexplicable forces as agents with purpose and intelligence, projecting consciousness onto the cosmos to create a narrative that preserves both wonder and wisdom. Even the moral complexity of these myths is significant. Celestial visitors are rarely unambiguously good or evil. They act according to principles that are alien to human understanding. Their interventions shape destinies, reward obedience, and punish hubris. Listeners are guided to perceive the world as a space of moral and existential tension, where knowledge is precious, power is temporary, and human action is consequential. This nuanced framing elevates myth from simple storytelling to an immersive meditation on humanity's place within the cosmic order. As we imagine the Apkallu walking among the first cities of Sumer, the Watchers observing early humanity with ambiguous intent, or the sky people descending onto Pacific islands, we begin to understand the profound human need for narrative interpretation of extraordinary events. These myths are not merely entertaining. They are attempts to reconcile awe, fear, curiosity, and moral reflection. They encourage patience, respect, and humility in the face of forces far beyond ordinary comprehension. They speak to the deep, quiet longing of the human mind to connect with the sublime. Tonight, as we trace the arcs of fire across the sky in imagination, we see the threads of continuity in human storytelling. Celestial visitors remain a testament to humanity's instinct to anthropomorphize the unknown, to seek order in chaos, and to preserve lessons in the fabric of myth. Their descent is a meditation on knowledge, morality, and wonder, a reminder that even the most terrifying and inexplicable forces can be transformed into narrative, contemplation, and gentle guidance. And as listeners drift, soothed by these soft stories of fire and sky, they are carried along a subtle current of understanding. That every comet, every meteor, every mysterious visitor is a reflection of the human desire to find meaning in the boundless, unknowable universe. Beneath the canopy of stars and the quiet sweep of night, humanity has always looked to the heavens and wondered what secrets lie beyond the visible. Among the most enduring and evocative myths are those of celestial bodies themselves. Sun, moon, planets, and stars imagined as sentient, divine, or imbued with mysterious power. To ancient observers, the night sky was both map and message, a canvas upon which gods, heroes, and cosmic dramas played out. These myths reveal a profound human desire to understand patterns, predict cycles, and find meaning in the vastness of space, a desire that has persisted for millennia, quietly shaping ritual, culture, and imagination. In Mesopotamia, the movements of planets and stars were meticulously recorded, giving rise to some of the earliest forms of astrology and cosmic myth-making. The Babylonians assigned deities to celestial bodies: Venus as Inanna, goddess of love and war; Jupiter as Marduk, protector and king; Saturn as Ninurta, god of agriculture and law. Each movement across the sky was seen not as a random occurrence, but as a signal, a communication from the divine. Observing these patterns, ancient humans could interpret omens, predict seasonal shifts, and understand cycles of fortune and misfortune. Myth, in this sense, was a way of translating the unknowable language of the cosmos into human terms, rendering the vast and impersonal universe intimate and comprehensible. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the sun god Ra traveled across the sky by day and through the underworld by night, a daily journey that mirrored the eternal rhythm of life and death. The moon, too, held meaning. Thoth, god of wisdom and time, was connected with lunar cycles, guiding calendars and rituals. To the Egyptians, celestial movements were not abstract. They were intertwined with morality, order, and the preservation of Ma'at, the cosmic balance that ensured the world's stability. Myth and astronomy were inseparable, each illuminating the other, and providing a framework through which the mysteries of existence could be contemplated and even partially mastered. In the Greco-Roman world, the heavens became a theater for stories of gods and heroes. Constellations such as Orion, Cassiopeia, and Andromeda were explained as the eternal placement of figures from human or divine drama. Shooting stars might signify the passing of a soul, a divine message, or impending change. Even planets were given personalities: Mercury the swift, Mars the fiery, Venus the beautiful. In these stories, the cosmos becomes a living, moral, and narrative space, a reflection of human concerns writ across infinity. Myth allowed humanity to inhabit the sky imaginatively, to feel both awe and agency within a universe far larger than themselves. Across cultures, similar patterns emerge. The Maya meticulously charted Venus, using its movements to guide warfare and ritual, while the Polynesians used the stars as a navigational system, embedding stories of gods, ancestors, and journeys within constellations. In China, the moon goddess Chang'e and the Jade Emperor presided over celestial cycles, while the positions of stars guided imperial decisions. In every instance, mythology functions as a bridge between observation and imagination, allowing humans to impose narrative order on what might otherwise be overwhelming vastness. These celestial myths also carry moral and philosophical undertones. Just as the heavens were orderly yet vast, life was understood to contain both pattern and unpredictability. Stars, planets, and comets were not merely objects. They were active participants in human experience, influencing destiny, offering lessons, and warning of imbalance. By observing, recording, and narrating, ancient people could feel connected to the cosmos and empowered to navigate the unknown. In essence, the sky became a teacher, its myths a gentle guide, and its rhythms a lullaby for reflective minds. The emotional resonance of celestial myths is subtle but profound. The rising sun brings reassurance, the full moon evokes reflection, and the first evening star sparks curiosity and hope. Stories of cosmic events, whether the eruption of a nova, the passage of a comet, or the alignment of planets, became ways to process awe and anxiety, blending wonder with narrative to make the incomprehensible tangible. For listeners at night, these myths encourage a calm, meditative focus, as if by contemplating the heavens one can touch the infinite while remaining grounded in human understanding. The universality of celestial myths hints at their deep psychological significance. Humans are pattern seekers by nature, finding structure in repetition and significance in cycles. The cosmos, with its predictable motions and unpredictable events, provided the perfect canvas for storytelling. Myth, therefore, is not a departure from reality, but a tool to comprehend it, offering rhythm, reassurance, and reflective space. In this sense, the heavens themselves became a stage for human curiosity, morality, and imagination, a theater that could be visited nightly in thought, meditation, and quiet wonder. Modern exploration of space, while scientific, still carries echoes of these ancient myths. The naming of planets after Roman gods, the poetic interpretation of celestial phenomena, and humanity's enduring fascination with the stars all reflect an instinctive urge to connect observation with narrative. Even as telescopes and satellites reveal the physical universe with precision, myth persists as a way to contextualize what remains vast and mysterious, reminding us that human imagination has always sought companionship among the stars. Tonight, as listeners drift towards sleep, the stories of sun, moon, and stars act as both guide and lullaby. Each myth, whether of celestial order, divine journey, or cosmic drama, offers a quiet meditation on the nature of existence, the patterns of time, and the enduring human desire to understand the infinite. We are invited to lie beneath the imagined constellations of past civilizations, tracing the arcs of gods and heroes across the sky, letting their quiet wisdom and gentle narrative cadence lull the mind toward rest. Ultimately, celestial myths are a testament to humanity's enduring need to translate wonder into story, chaos into comprehension, and the vastness of the universe into something that can be felt, imagined, and carried quietly into the night. They remind us that even amid darkness and uncertainty, there is order, meaning, and rhythm, and that in listening to these tales, we participate in a tradition as old as thought itself, finding calm, curiosity, and connection among the stars. In the shadows of towering mountains, within dense forests, and along the winding rivers of ancient lands, humans first encountered forces they could not control, storms that arrived without warning, earthquakes that split the earth, and diseases that swept through villages with silent ferocity. These experiences left deep impressions on collective memory, shaping stories that blended observation with imagination, fact with speculation. In the absence of scientific explanation, humans turned to myth to interpret the natural world, giving agency to elements and disasters, and imbuing them with personality, intention, and morality. These myths did not merely entertain. They taught, warned, and comforted, providing a framework for understanding a universe that often seemed capricious and overwhelming. Across Mesopotamia, the power of rivers and the threat of floods inspired stories that explained both creation and destruction. In one narrative, the Tigris and Euphrates themselves are portrayed as serpentine forces, weaving through land and human lives, carrying both nourishment and devastation. Villages lived in constant awareness of the river's moods, offering ritual, prayer, and sacrifice to appease these forces. The myths emerging from these experiences framed natural disasters as purposeful, intelligible phenomena rather than random calamities, allowing communities to navigate fear with structured belief. Through this lens, danger became a teacher, and survival required attentiveness, reverence, and understanding. Similarly, ancient Greeks transformed their encounters with earthquakes, storms, and volcanic eruptions into narratives populated by gods and monsters. Poseidon, god of the sea and earthquakes, wielded his trident to shake the land or summon tempests, embodying the unpredictability of natural forces. Mount Etna's eruptions were attributed to the forge of Hephaestus, where fire and metal met in divine creation. These stories offered explanation and context, framing destructive events within a moral and cosmological order. By personifying natural phenomena, humans could engage with chaos as a dialogue rather than an unknowable threat, creating a psychological space in which fear and curiosity coexisted. In ancient India, the Vedic text describes storms, droughts, and floods as manifestations of deities' will, requiring careful observance of ritual and moral order. Agni, the fire god, embodied both destructive and purifying forces, while Indra, wielder of thunder and rain, could nourish or devastate. Natural phenomena were thus intertwined with morality. Human action could influence divine favor, and careful adherence to dharma could mitigate the destructive potential of the environment. These myths provided guidance, reassurance, and an understanding of cause and effect long before empirical science emerged, demonstrating humanity's ability to integrate lived experience into structured reflection. Across the Pacific, Polynesian myths similarly encode natural knowledge and caution. Volcanoes, tsunamis, and powerful ocean currents were explained through deities like Pele, goddess of fire and volcanic activity. Her mood determined whether the land would produce fertile soil or erupt in chaos. These stories reinforced a deep awareness of the environment, encouraging respect, preparation, and observation. They were not simply tales of fear. They were practical guides encoded within narrative, allowing human societies to adapt and survive. Myth, in this sense, becomes both teacher and moral compass, blending reverence with actionable understanding. Beyond the dramatic events of earth and sky, myths also emerge to explain subtle phenomena, eclipses, comets, and meteor showers. In ancient China, eclipses were considered the swallowing of the sun or moon by celestial dragons, prompting ritual to restore balance. In the Norse tradition, wolves Skoll and Hati pursue the sun and moon, creating cosmic tension and impermanence. These stories transformed momentary, inexplicable events into narrative continuity, offering reassurance that even extraordinary occurrences fit within a larger order. The human mind, attuned to pattern and story, found comfort in framing sudden darkness, fiery streaks, or unusual celestial alignment as meaningful rather than random. Natural disasters also carry deep moral and existential significance in myth. They are often framed as consequences of human action or moral failure, creating a connection between ethical conduct and environmental stability. Floods, earthquakes, and plagues serve as reminders that hubris, greed, or neglect can invite catastrophe, reinforcing social cohesion and moral reflection. At the same time, the myths provide hope, survival, renewal, and divine mercy are possible, allowing communities to process grief and rebuild both materially and spiritually. This dual function, warning and comfort, is central to the enduring power of myth as a guide through the unpredictable rhythms of life. The universality of these natural disaster myths highlights a shared human need to make sense of the world. Despite differences in geography, culture, and time, societies consistently personified rivers, mountains, storms, and fire, crafting narratives that intertwined observation with imagination. In doing so, they created a subtle pedagogy, lessons of respect, preparedness, and humility embedded within tales that captivated attention and eased anxiety. Listeners absorbed both practical knowledge and moral insight, reinforcing the interplay between survival and wonder, observation and reflection. These stories also provide insight into human psychology. Myths of natural catastrophe allow people to externalize fear, to imagine agency in a chaotic universe, and to participate in rituals of control, even if symbolic. They teach patience, vigilance, and empathy, encouraging humans to anticipate challenges while accepting the limits of control. By framing natural phenomena as narrative events with meaning and intention, myths offered solace in the face of unpredictability, cultivating resilience and imaginative engagement with the environment. Even in contemporary times, these myths retain their quiet resonance. Modern storytelling continues to depict disasters as moral and narrative forces, echoing ancient structures in film, literature, and oral tradition. The archetype of a storm, a volcano, or a destructive flood carries symbolic weight, reminding us of human vulnerability, ethical responsibility, and the enduring interplay between fear and fascination. The patterns established in early myth continue to shape how we interpret and emotionally engage with natural events, demonstrating the timeless relevance of these narratives. As we listen tonight, the myths of storms, earthquakes, and cataclysms gently unfold. They are not tales of horror alone, but meditative reflections on the interplay between human fragility and the enduring rhythms of the natural world. Through them, listeners are invited to cultivate patience, curiosity, and humility, to recognize the quiet lessons hidden in chaos, and to contemplate humanity's place within a universe of immense, sometimes terrifying, beauty. Ultimately, myths of natural disasters remind us that humanity has always sought to interpret the unknown, to translate fear into reflection, and to find continuity amid chaos. By listening and imagining, we engage in the same act as our ancestors, observing the world with reverence, weaving story around mystery, and allowing narrative to soothe, instruct, and illuminate the human experience in the shadow of forces far greater than ourselves. Across the continents and millennia, one of the most enduring and evocative threads in human storytelling is the tale of heroes and their journeys. These myths, found in every culture from the ancient Sumerians to the Greeks, the Celts, and beyond, serve as mirrors of human courage, morality, and the universal struggle against forces both internal and external. Heroes are not only warriors or rulers. They are embodiments of aspiration, morality, and resilience, navigating a world filled with danger, uncertainty, and moral complexity. Their journeys are both literal and metaphorical, reflecting the timeless human endeavor to confront fear, embrace transformation, and seek understanding in a universe brimming with mystery. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh offers one of the earliest and most profound explorations of the heroic journey. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, is two-thirds divine, yet intensely human in his flaws, ambitions, and grief. His adventures, from confronting monsters like Humbaba to seeking immortality after the death of his friend Enkidu, are reflections of universal human concerns, the inevitability of mortality, the search for meaning, and the desire to leave a lasting legacy. As he journeys through forests, rivers, and distant lands, he encounters both terror and wisdom, divine favor and human failure, creating a narrative rhythm that mirrors the emotional ebb and flow of life itself. The story teaches that heroism is not only measured in triumph, but in reflection, learning, and the courage to face one's limitations. Greek mythology continues this exploration of heroism with figures like Heracles, Perseus, and Odysseus. Each undertakes extraordinary quests, battling monsters, navigating divine interference, and enduring profound hardship. Heracles' labors are as much about moral fortitude as physical strength, testing his resilience and commitment to justice. Odysseus' journey home in the Odyssey is not a tale of conquest, but of endurance, wit, and ethical navigation through a world where gods and nature conspire alike. These stories emphasize that heroism is multifaceted. Courage is inseparable from wisdom. Perseverance is intertwined with humility, and success often emerges from the ability to navigate moral as well as physical challenges. Beyond Greece, the heroic archetype resonates across cultures. In India, the Mahabharata and Ramayana chronicle the deeds of warriors and kings who embody dharma, or righteous duty. Rama, in his quest to rescue Sita, confronts both supernatural foes and personal trials, guided by principle and devotion. Arjuna's journey in the Mahabharata is equally layered, exploring duty, fear, and ethical responsibility amid warfare. These epics provide a framework for understanding moral complexity, demonstrating that heroism is as much about inner cultivation and adherence to ethical principles as it is about outward victory. Mesoamerican and Native American traditions also offer rich tapestries of hero myths. Quetzalcoatl, in addition to his divine aspects, embarks on journeys to bring wisdom, maize, and civilization to humanity. The hero twins of the Popol Vuh descend into the underworld, confront gods and monsters, and ultimately restore balance, demonstrating courage, ingenuity, and moral discernment. Such narratives emphasize the hero's role in shaping the human and cosmic order, highlighting the interplay between personal valor, community welfare, and the rhythms of nature and the divine. The psychological resonance of heroic myths is profound. Humans are drawn to stories in which ordinary or semi-divine figures confront extraordinary challenges, reflecting our own inner struggles with fear, temptation, and uncertainty. The hero's journey provides a structured path for understanding adversity, departure, trial, transformation, and return. In listening to these stories, we vicariously experience triumph, failure, insight, and reflection, allowing the mind to process its own challenges and desires through narrative. This reflective process is soothing, meditative, and even instructive, creating a mental rhythm akin to the cycles of sleep and dream. Heroic myths also illuminate the interplay between the human and the divine. Across cultures, heroes often encounter gods, spirits, or cosmic forces that guide, challenge, or obstruct them. These encounters illustrate the delicate balance between human agency and external influence, a tension that mirrors real life. Success is rarely a product of brute strength alone. It requires wisdom, patience, humility, and moral awareness. This nuanced depiction reinforces the idea that life itself is a journey requiring courage, reflection, and ethical engagement with both the visible and invisible forces that shape existence. The narratives of heroes are not limited to action and conflict. They are imbued with ethical and philosophical depth. Trials often serve as mirrors, reflecting the hero's inner state, unresolved fears, or moral blind spots. The monsters confronted are frequently symbolic, embodying greed, envy, hubris, or chaos, while allies and mentors guide understanding, offering perspective and wisdom. Each step of the journey is both literal and symbolic, teaching listeners that growth arises from trial, understanding, and the integration of experience. These stories offer a quiet, reflective rhythm, inviting the audience to consider not only what the hero does, but how and why, cultivating empathy, insight, and contemplation. Across time, heroic myths have also provided communities with shared identity and cultural continuity. They encode societal values, moral norms, and aspirational qualities into stories that transcend generations. Festivals, rituals, and oral traditions reinforce the hero's journey, allowing communities to internalize lessons about courage, justice, and resilience. These shared narratives become part of the cultural fabric, subtly shaping behavior, belief, and collective consciousness, while simultaneously offering entertainment and wonder. As we drift into the quiet of night, the heroic journey becomes a meditation. Each adventure, trial, and triumph invites reflection on our own life's path, encouraging patience, resilience, and moral discernment. The hero's courage is mirrored in our small daily acts of bravery. Their reflection, in thought and story, reassures us that even in the face of uncertainty, we possess the capacity to endure, transform, and grow. Listening to these myths becomes a gentle exercise in empathy, imagination, and reflection, a bridge connecting the past and present through narrative rhythm. Ultimately, heroic myths remind us that the human experience is a series of journeys, internal and external, challenging yet rewarding, fraught with peril yet suffused with possibility. They are not merely tales of adventure. They are meditative frameworks, allowing listeners to explore morality, resilience, and the interplay between human action and cosmic order. By following the steps of Gilgamesh, Odysseus, Rama, or the hero twins, we enter a shared contemplative space, where myth becomes guide, mirror, and companion, softly ushering the mind toward wonder, reflection, and rest. In the quiet corners of ancient temples, along the winding paths of sacred mountains, and in the deep stillness of forests untouched by human hands, humanity first encountered the sacred. Across cultures and continents, myths arose to explain, preserve, and revere the forces that seemed beyond comprehension. Forces that were benevolent, terrifying, or both. These sacred narratives were not merely stories. They were frameworks for understanding life, death, and the delicate balance between human aspiration and cosmic order. They offered guidance, consolation, and wonder, teaching that some truths could not be grasped through sight or logic alone, but through reverence, reflection, and imagination. In ancient Mesopotamia, the divine was woven into every aspect of daily life. Temples rose as centers of both worship and civic organization, dedicated to gods such as Enlil, Inanna, and Marduk. Myths recounting their deeds were not abstract tales, but instructional narratives, illustrating principles of justice, morality, and the proper relationship between humans and the divine. Ritual, prayer, and myth reinforced one another. The stories provided context for ceremonial practice, while the rituals brought the stories to life. To the people of Sumer and Akkad, the sacred was not distant. It was present in water, wind, and soil, in the cycles of agriculture, and in the rhythms of daily life. In Egypt, myths of the sacred were deeply entwined with the natural world. The sun god Ra's daily journey across the sky mirrored the eternal cycle of life, death, and renewal, while the underworld, ruled by Osiris, offered a vision of moral order and cosmic justice. Sacred narratives guided rulers and citizens alike, providing ethical and spiritual maps for navigating existence. Even the simplest acts, harvesting grain, offering incense, or observing the Nile's rise, were imbued with meaning, connecting the mundane with the cosmic. Through myth, ordinary experience became a reflection of divine principles, and daily life itself became a meditation on balance, duty, and reverence. In Hindu tradition, sacred myths explore the intricate interplay between cosmic forces and human responsibility. Stories of Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi are not merely entertaining tales. They are lessons in Dharma, illustrating the consequences of action and the moral patterns underlying existence. The cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction are reflected in both the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of human life. These narratives teach that sacred understanding is not static. It is a process of engagement, observation, and contemplation, guiding humans to act in harmony with forces far greater than themselves. Greek mythology also situates the sacred within narrative and landscape. Temples, altars, and sacred groves were accompanied by myths that articulated the relationship between humans and gods. Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and other deities were not abstractions. They were active participants in human affairs, embodying moral lessons, natural phenomena, and existential truths. Myths conveyed both awe and intimacy, showing that the divine could be terrifying and nurturing, distant yet responsive, demanding yet guiding. By framing the sacred through story, ancient Greeks created a system in which reverence, understanding, and moral reflection were intertwined. Sacred myths often address the unknown and the liminal. Mountains, rivers, caves, and celestial phenomena were seen as portals between worlds, thresholds where mortals might encounter divine presence or insight. In Japan, the kami inhabit natural features, infusing landscapes with spiritual significance and guiding human behavior through subtle, narrative cues. In Mesoamerica, pyramids, cenotes, and ceremonial plazas served as bridges between the earthly and the divine, connecting human ritual with cosmic cycles. In these stories, sacred spaces are both literal and metaphorical, inviting reflection on the unseen forces that shape life, morality, and the rhythms of the world. The moral dimension of sacred myth is profound. Stories often depict the rewards of humility, respect, and ethical conduct, as well as the consequences of hubris, greed, and transgression. The sacred is both teacher and mirror, offering lessons that are immediate and long-lasting. By embedding ethical principles within narrative, ancient cultures provided listeners with a framework for contemplation and guidance, creating a gentle rhythm of story, reflection, and moral calibration. These narratives are meditative, encouraging quiet consideration and a mindful engagement with the world. The emotional resonance of sacred myths is subtle yet enduring. They evoke awe, wonder, reverence, and sometimes gentle fear, producing a mental state conducive to reflection and calm. Listening to these stories encourages introspection, a sense of connection with forces beyond ordinary perception, and an awareness of one's place in the unfolding order of existence. By contemplating the sacred through myth, humans cultivate patience, humility, and insight, softening the edges of anxiety and fostering a gentle acceptance of life's mysteries. Sacred myths also preserve continuity across generations. Oral traditions, written texts, and ritual enactments ensure that ethical, spiritual, and practical knowledge is transmitted across time. The stories serve as a bridge between past and present, linking listeners to ancestors who observed, questioned, and reflected upon the sacred. This continuity reinforces cultural identity, collective memory, and the shared human quest for understanding, ensuring that the lessons of reverence and moral balance remain alive even as civilizations rise and fall. As listeners drift through these narratives tonight, sacred myths invite a meditative engagement with life. Each story, whether of gods walking among mortals, cosmic cycles, or natural phenomena imbued with spirit, provides a gentle space for reflection. By contemplating these tales, we learn not only about ancient cultures, but also about the rhythms of human thought, the ways in which story shapes understanding, and the enduring desire to find meaning in a vast, complex, and often mysterious world. Ultimately, sacred myths remind us that reverence and wonder are essential companions on the human journey. They teach that meaning often resides not in control, but in observation, not in certainty, but in contemplation. Through these stories, listeners are invited to enter a quiet, reflective space where the sacred is encountered gently, morally, and poetically, carrying both guidance and solace. In this way, myth becomes a meditation, a lullaby for thought, and a bridge connecting the human mind to the enduring rhythms of existence. Across the tapestry of human history, few threads are as compelling and persistent as the stories of magic, alchemy, and hidden knowledge. Long before science codified natural law, humans sought to understand and influence the world through ritual, observation, and the imagination. Alchemists attempted to transform base metals into gold. Healers used herbs and incantations to cure disease, and shamans traversed invisible realms to commune with spirits. These practices were not mere superstition. They were earnest attempts to engage with the mysteries of existence, blending empirical observation, philosophical reflection, and imaginative insight into a coherent framework. In myth, magic becomes both metaphor and method, a lens through which humanity can explore the unseen forces that shape life. In ancient Egypt, alchemy and magical practice were intertwined with religion and the understanding of the natural world. Texts such as the Book of the Dead contain instructions not only for the afterlife, but also for manipulating spiritual and elemental forces. Priests and magicians worked with herbs, incantations, and sacred geometry to heal, protect, and guide. Their rituals were carefully codified, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of cause and effect, albeit expressed through the symbolic language of myth. The pursuit of hidden knowledge was thus inseparable from reverence, morality, and observation of natural cycles, reinforcing the idea that wisdom required both study and spiritual attunement. Similarly, in Mesopotamia, magic and divination were practical tools as well as spiritual endeavors. The cuneiform texts preserve instructions for incantations, amulets, and rituals designed to protect against disease, misfortune, or divine displeasure. Scholars and priests acted as intermediaries between the visible and invisible worlds, interpreting omens and applying knowledge to human concerns. Magic, in this context, becomes a bridge. It transforms uncertainty into structure, fear into agency, and observation into narrative. The myths surrounding these practices embed lessons on patience, respect, and discernment, illustrating that the pursuit of hidden knowledge requires humility and careful attention. In Greco-Roman traditions, the allure of hidden knowledge extended into philosophy and mystery cults. Oracles, such as the Pythia at Delphi, were believed to access divine insight, offering guidance veiled in metaphor and poetry. Mysteries like those of Eleusis invited initiates to experience secret rites that promised deeper understanding of life, death, and cosmic order. These practices reveal a subtle interplay between imagination and experience. By participating in ritual, one could gain insight into truths inaccessible through ordinary perception. Myth, magic, and philosophy thus intersect, demonstrating that hidden knowledge is as much about internal transformation as external action. Alchemy, particularly in the Hellenistic and later medieval periods, illustrates humanity's desire to bridge the material and spiritual worlds. Beyond the literal goal of transmuting metals, alchemy symbolized the refinement of the self, the pursuit of balance, and the quest to understand the hidden laws governing existence. Symbols such as the Ouroboros, the philosopher's stone, and mystical diagrams encoded complex ideas about cycles, transformation, and the interconnectedness of life. These images endure because they capture the tension between the known and unknown, fact and metaphor, offering insight that resonates even when the literal aims of alchemy remain unattainable. Magic and hidden knowledge are also present in mythic storytelling, where heroes, gods, and sages often possess esoteric wisdom or arcane power. Hermes Trismegistus, Merlin, and the legendary shamans of the Americas illustrate figures who move between realms, decoding the secrets of nature and consciousness. These narratives emphasize that true mastery requires patience, ethical grounding, and attunement to subtle patterns, reinforcing a recurring theme. Knowledge, particularly hidden knowledge, carries responsibility and consequence. The stories teach that insight is never purely instrumental. It is intertwined with character, morality, and perception. The psychological resonance of magic and alchemy in myth is profound. Humans are naturally drawn to the notion that the visible world is only a portion of reality, that hidden structures shape events and outcomes. Myths of magical transformation, secret wisdom, and mystical encounters offer a framework for exploring uncertainty, cultivating curiosity, and exercising imagination. They create a meditative space in which the mind can contemplate possibilities beyond the immediately observable, engaging with the unknown in a controlled, reflective manner. Listening to these stories gently encourages patience, wonder, and the acknowledgement that not all mysteries are meant to be solved at once. Across cultures, the pursuit of hidden knowledge often comes with cautionary lessons. Stories of those who overreach, misuse power, or disrespect the boundaries of natural and spiritual laws are common. The alchemist who disregards ethical principle, the sorcerer who seeks forbidden wisdom, or the initiate who fails to prepare properly are frequently met with failure or catastrophe. Such narratives function as moral frameworks, guiding behavior while sustaining curiosity. They reinforce that the pursuit of insight, while alluring, requires responsibility, focus, and respect for forces that exceed ordinary comprehension. The aesthetic and symbolic richness of magical myths also contributes to their enduring appeal. Images of glowing symbols, mysterious incantations, enchanted objects, and secret laboratories stimulate imagination and evoke a sense of quiet wonder. This visual and conceptual language resonates with the human mind, inviting contemplation and mental exploration. As the listener drifts through these narratives at night, the metaphoric and mystical dimensions of myth provide both entertainment and subtle cognitive engagement, allowing the mind to wander safely through complexity and ambiguity. Ultimately, myths of magic and hidden knowledge serve as meditative tools, blending wonder, ethics, and reflection into narratives that endure across time. They encourage listeners to consider the interplay of visible and invisible forces, to respect the limits of understanding, and to cultivate patience, insight, and curiosity. By following the paths of alchemists, shamans, and sages, we engage in a quiet, reflective journey that mirrors both the external exploration of the world and the internal exploration of consciousness, offering guidance, solace, and gentle intellectual stimulation. In every corner of the ancient world, humans have told stories of the unknown, creatures that defy comprehension, lands that vanish and reappear, and phenomena that challenge the limits of perception. These myths of the uncanny and mysterious blur the line between reality and imagination, capturing the human fascination with that which cannot be fully explained. From the hidden valleys of the Himalayas to the misty forests of northern Europe, cultures have described beings and places that inhabit the borderlands between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Such narratives do not merely frighten. They invite contemplation, curiosity, and reflection on the limits of human knowledge. The tales of monsters and strange creatures often reflect humanity's attempt to understand nature, danger, and morality. In Greek mythology, the chimera, part lion, part goat, part serpent, embodies the unpredictable and chaotic forces of the world, challenging heroes like Bellerophon to confront danger with courage and ingenuity. Similarly, the Norse myths tell of the Midgard serpent, a creature so vast that it encircles the world, symbolizing both the interconnectedness and the peril of the cosmos. These stories offer more than entertainment. They provide a symbolic framework through which humans can process fear, uncertainty, and the unknowable aspects of existence. In many cultures, mysterious lands or hidden realms represent the ultimate unknown. The concept of Avalon in Celtic tradition, a mist-shrouded island of healing and magic, evokes the allure of places untouched by ordinary time and space. Similarly, the Himalayas, sacred in many Asian traditions, are imagined as home to immortal beings, hidden cities, and portals to higher planes of consciousness. These hidden landscapes speak to a universal human longing for exploration, understanding, and transcendence, an imaginative journey beyond the limits of everyday perception. Legends of shapeshifters, spirits, and beings that move between worlds further illuminate the human fascination with ambiguity and transformation. In Japanese folklore, the kitsune is a fox spirit capable of shifting forms, often teaching lessons through cunning or mischief. Native American traditions tell of skinwalkers and other beings that traverse human and animal forms, embodying moral and spiritual lessons. These myths emphasize that reality is not always fixed, encouraging flexibility, observation, and attentiveness in human perception. They suggest that understanding often requires more than brute logic. It requires imagination, intuition, and a willingness to entertain ambiguity. Mystery in myth is also tied to the natural environment. Deep forests, oceans, mountains, and deserts are frequently depicted as inhabited by spirits, monsters, or invisible forces. Such places represent both danger and opportunity, chaos and wisdom. The ocean, for example, is home to mermaids, leviathans, and sunken cities, symbolizing both abundance and peril. Forests conceal witches, spirits, or animals imbued with supernatural intelligence. In these narratives, the environment itself becomes a character, teaching the importance of respect, observation, and adaptability. Humans are reminded that survival and understanding require humility in the face of vast and unpredictable forces. The psychological resonance of mysterious beings and lands is profound. They allow humans to externalize fear, uncertainty, and wonder, offering a narrative container in which to explore what is otherwise overwhelming. By engaging with myths of the unknown, listeners experience controlled exposure to danger and ambiguity, cultivating resilience, curiosity, and imaginative thinking. These stories are simultaneously thrilling and soothing, providing a mental rhythm that prepares the mind for reflection, contemplation, and even rest. Across cultures, myths of mystery also serve as ethical and philosophical lessons. Creatures that challenge heroes, lands that test travelers, and spirits that reward or punish highlight principles of moral discernment, courage, and adaptability. By framing challenges as encounters with the unknown, myths allow listeners to practice problem-solving, ethical reasoning, and emotional regulation within the safe bounds of narrative. They convey the subtle idea that life itself is a landscape of uncertainty, where perception, choice, and reflection shape outcomes. The aesthetic qualities of mysterious myths further enhance their meditative appeal. Fog-shrouded mountains, glittering seas under moonlight, and forests dense with shadows create imagery that captivates the imagination. Descriptions of creatures, hidden cities, or magical phenomena often blend the beautiful with the terrifying, evoking wonder tempered with caution. For listeners at night, these tales invite gentle mental wandering, encouraging visualization, creativity, and immersion in the rhythm of story rather than the immediate concerns of waking life. In addition, myths of the mysterious often preserve cultural memory and collective curiosity. Stories of beings, hidden places, or inexplicable events are transmitted orally or through texts, ensuring that fascination with the unknown persists across generations. They create shared reference points for communities, uniting listeners in contemplation of what lies beyond direct perception, fostering both imagination and cultural continuity. Ultimately, myths of mystery invite humans to dwell at the edges of comprehension. They remind us that the world is full of wonder, danger, and unseen complexity, and that understanding often requires patience, humility, and imagination. By listening to these stories tonight, the mind is encouraged to relax, wander, and explore safely the realms of the unknown. In this gentle journey, fear is tempered by curiosity, darkness by reflection, and the impossible by the rhythm of narrative. In the tapestry of myth and legend, few motifs are as compelling as the stories of treasures, lost civilizations, and forgotten knowledge. These narratives speak to humanity's enduring fascination with discovery, the unknown, and the remnants of worlds that once were. From sunken cities beneath the ocean to hidden temples in dense jungles, tales of lost worlds carry a quiet tension between wonder and melancholy, curiosity and caution. They evoke a sense of longing, not only for material wealth, but for understanding, connection, and the secrets left behind by ancestors. In exploring these myths, we encounter the delicate balance between human ambition and humility, between exploration and respect for the past. In Mesopotamia, the ruins of Ur and Babylon inspired stories of lost splendor, often framed as divine warning or moral lesson. Temples and ziggurats, once centers of power and knowledge, became symbols of impermanence, teaching that human achievement is fragile and subject to cosmic forces. Texts and oral traditions preserve the memory of these civilizations, blending historical record with imaginative narrative. The myths emerging from these ruins remind us that every treasure, every monument, carries both beauty and transience, a reflection of human aspiration intertwined with the inexorable flow of time. Across the Mediterranean, Greek myths frequently recount lost cities and hidden knowledge. Atlantis, perhaps the most famous of all, represents a civilization of great wisdom and technological achievement, ultimately swallowed by the sea as a consequence of hubris. Though the historical reality of Atlantis is debated, the narrative resonates as a meditation on the fragility of knowledge and the moral dimensions of progress. Similarly, the epics of Homer preserve memory of vanished cultures, emphasizing continuity through story even as physical structures decay. These tales suggest that human legacy is preserved not only in stone or treasure, but in the narratives we pass down, quietly connecting past and present. In the Americas, myths of lost civilizations and hidden knowledge abound. The Maya, Inca, and Aztec cultures all left traces of grandeur in architecture, astronomy, and ritual practice. Legends of hidden cities, sacred caches, and secret wisdoms circulate in oral histories, blending history, spirituality, and imagination. These narratives emphasize that knowledge and power are fragile and must be sought with care, reverence, and ethical attention. The loss of these civilizations is not merely historical. It is symbolic, reminding listeners of the impermanence of human endeavor and the subtlety required to engage with mysteries larger than oneself. The psychological resonance of lost worlds and hidden treasures is profound. They embody both desire and reflection, offering a safe space to confront ambition, curiosity, and mortality. Listening to these myths evokes a gentle tension between pursuit and humility, prompting contemplation of what is sought and what is preserved in memory. The treasures of legend are often symbolic: wisdom, virtue, understanding, and the moral lessons of history. By imagining journeys to these forgotten realms, the mind practices exploration, patience, and imaginative problem-solving, while simultaneously resting in the rhythm of story. These myths also often carry ethical and moral undertones. The pursuit of treasure or lost knowledge is frequently framed as a test of character. Greed, arrogance, or disrespect leads to catastrophe, while patience, humility, and insight yield reward. Tales of sunken cities, hidden temples, or sacred caches are rarely about mere accumulation. They are meditations on stewardship, understanding, and the proper relationship between humans and the forces, material and spiritual, that shape existence. In this way, lost world myths function as quiet guides, encouraging careful observation, respect, and moral awareness. Across Asia, legends of hidden kingdoms and sacred artifacts further illustrate humanity's fascination with mystery and discovery. The lost city of Shambhala in Tibetan tradition represents an enlightened realm, hidden from ordinary perception, yet offering profound wisdom to those prepared to find it. Similarly, Japanese and Chinese myths tell of secret gardens, ancient treasures, and hidden temples, often accessible only through ethical behavior, spiritual preparation, or insight into the natural world. These narratives reinforce the idea that true discovery is not merely physical. It is also moral, spiritual, and intellectual. In addition to their narrative and moral dimensions, myths of lost civilizations and treasures carry aesthetic and imaginative appeal. The descriptions of sunken palaces, overgrown ruins, and glittering artifacts stimulate visualization, evoking wonder and quiet contemplation. Listening to these stories encourages the mind to wander safely through unknown worlds, engaging with mystery and beauty in a reflective, meditative manner. The tension between curiosity and respect, discovery and loss, mirrors the subtle rhythms of thought that guide the transition from wakefulness to sleep. The endurance of these myths across cultures and centuries underscores their deep resonance. They remind us that human history is layered with both achievement and impermanence, and that our understanding of the world is enhanced not only by what survives, but also by what is lost and remembered through narrative. By contemplating these lost worlds, listeners engage with universal themes: mortality, curiosity, wisdom, and the delicate stewardship of knowledge. Ultimately, myths of treasures and forgotten civilizations invite quiet reflection on the transient yet enduring nature of human endeavor. They teach that curiosity and exploration must be balanced with respect, that ambition is tempered by ethical reflection, and that the true treasures of the past often reside not in material wealth, but in memory, insight, and narrative continuity. By following the paths of lost cities and hidden knowledge, the mind drifts gently through time, embracing both wonder and meditation, preparing for rest and reflection in the soft, enduring cadence of myth. Across every culture and epoch, myths of love, fate, and the unseen threads connecting human lives have offered some of the most intimate and emotionally resonant stories. These narratives explore the delicate interplay between choice and destiny, passion and consequence, highlighting both the tenderness and the turmoil inherent in human connection. From the tragic romance of Orpheus and Eurydice to the enduring devotion of Rama and Sita, these stories reflect the universal human experience of longing, loss, and the subtle shaping of lives by forces beyond comprehension. In myth, love is not merely personal. It is cosmic, moral, and transformative, offering insight into the deepest currents of the human heart. In Greek mythology, tales of love often intertwine with fate and the divine. Orpheus' descent into the underworld to retrieve Eurydice illustrates the profound tension between desire and limitation. Despite his extraordinary talent and courage, Orpheus is constrained by rules beyond his control, emphasizing the delicate balance between human agency and cosmic law. Similarly, the story of Pyramus and Thisbe, a tragic tale of forbidden love, reflects the fragility of human connection and the inevitability of unforeseen circumstances. These narratives illustrate that love, while deeply personal, is inseparable from the broader rhythms of fate, teaching listeners reflection, empathy, and the acceptance of uncertainty. In the Indian epics, love is intertwined with duty, morality, and divine purpose. The story of Rama and Sita exemplifies devotion and resilience amid trials, illustrating how love is strengthened by virtue, patience, and mutual respect. In the Mahabharata, complex relationships among characters such as Arjuna, Draupadi, and Krishna explore the ethical dimensions of desire, loyalty, and sacrifice. Love in these myths is rarely simple. It is embedded within social, spiritual, and cosmic frameworks, emphasizing the profound interplay between emotion, responsibility, and destiny. Native American and Mesoamerican traditions also depict love as both sacred and instructive. Myths often portray relationships between humans and supernatural beings, highlighting the necessity of respect, communication, and understanding. The love stories of spirits, animals, and humans frequently convey moral lessons, illustrating the consequences of choices and the interconnectedness of life. These narratives invite listeners to contemplate the invisible threads that bind individuals, communities, and the natural world, emphasizing harmony, empathy, and attentiveness. Romantic myths often carry transformative and symbolic dimensions. Love may inspire heroic deeds, provoke profound self-discovery, or challenge moral and ethical boundaries. The Norse tale of Freya, goddess of love and fertility, demonstrates the power of desire to shape both human and divine action, while also emphasizing the responsibilities that accompany emotional connection. Similarly, Japanese and Chinese legends depict love as entwined with loyalty, honor, and balance, often teaching that harmony arises from understanding and respect for both self and other. The emotional resonance of these myths is both soothing and instructive. Listeners are invited to experience vicariously the joys and sorrows of lovers, the consequences of choices, and the subtle influence of fate. By tracing the arcs of desire, devotion, and loss, one cultivates empathy, reflection, and emotional intelligence. These stories encourage contemplation of one's own relationships, aspirations, and moral responsibilities, offering quiet meditation on human intimacy and interconnectedness. Myths of love and fate also explore the tension between freedom and inevitability. Lovers often face external forces, divine decree, social constraints, or the inexorable flow of time that test commitment, patience, and resilience. The tragic elements of such narratives underscore the impermanence of human life and emotion, while the triumphs highlight the enduring power of devotion, virtue, and courage. By observing these dynamics in myth, listeners are gently guided to accept uncertainty and complexity in their own lives. Across cultures, the intertwining of love and destiny underscores the moral and spiritual dimensions of connection. Choices are framed within ethical and cosmic contexts, teaching that relationships are not merely personal, but part of a broader, interconnected order. Myths encourage respect, attentiveness, and mindfulness in both action and emotion, providing narrative scaffolding for understanding the invisible bonds that shape life. Love, in these stories, becomes a lens through which to explore patience, reflection, and moral discernment. Aesthetic and narrative elements enhance the meditative quality of these myths. Imagery of moonlit nights, quiet gardens, enchanted forests, and celestial unions stimulates imagination and evokes emotional resonance. The gentle rhythm of narrative, alternating tension and release, mirrors the emotional cadence of human experience, inviting calm reflection. For nighttime listening, these stories create a soothing mental environment where the heart can wander safely through longing, connection, and introspection. Ultimately, myths of love, fate, and connection offer profound reflection on the human condition. They teach that relationships are intricate, shaped by choice and circumstance, and inseparable from ethical and cosmic patterns. By contemplating these stories tonight, listeners are invited to engage gently with their own emotions, understanding, and aspirations. Myth becomes a bridge to quiet introspection, guiding the mind through the tender, sometimes bittersweet rhythms of connection, longing, and human intimacy. The documentary concludes by inviting the audience to rest in the quiet resonance of ancient stories, where the line between history and legend gently blurs. Myths are presented as more than tales. They are vessels carrying human fears, hopes, and wisdom across time. The narration evokes twilight landscapes, moonlit ruins, and distant stars, creating a soft, immersive soundscape that mirrors the slow descent into sleep. As the section unfolds, listeners are reminded of the journey they have taken, from heroic deeds and celestial wonders to sacred spaces and hidden truths. Each story leaves a subtle imprint, a gentle echo that lingers quietly in the mind. Across cultures and centuries, myths reflect universal human concerns, allowing the audience to connect emotionally and intuitively with experiences far removed from their own. The light of understanding meets the dark of mystery, softly illuminating patterns and insights that endure. The narrative emphasizes that these echoes are companions in silence. Heroes, monsters, gods, and rituals, though ancient, continue to whisper lessons about courage, curiosity, and imagination. Calm imagery, like rustling leaves, flickering fires, or the slow drift of clouds across a starlit sky, invites relaxation and reflection. The final moments guide listeners to embrace the unknown, to find comfort in the soft rhythm of myth, and to drift naturally into rest. Myths become lullabies, and history becomes a serene landscape in which the mind can wander safely. By the end, the audience is gently prepared to fall asleep, carrying with them the quiet, enduring magic of stories that have survived through millennia.